Eu sou Paulo Figueiredo, estou aqui no Liberty Forum da Atlas Network em Miami, em 2016. Estou aqui com o Leonardo Brito. Leonardo é da Sociedade Baseada da Venezuela e nós temos uma oportunidade rara de saber realmente como são as coisas na Venezuela. O meu espanhol não é tão bom, vou fazer a entrevista no inglês. E eu acho que é a oportunidade do pessoal do Brasil de saber um pouco melhor a realidade que não chega a nós pela mídia, pela grande mídia. So, Leonardo, thank you for talking with us. My first question would be, we see a lot of bad news about Venezuela on the newspaper in Brazil. Not as often as we thought it would be normal to, but we see people starving, people eating food from the trash, people eating pets and like dogs and cats from the street, pigeons. We see people running out of the basic goods like toilet paper, deodorant. We see a lot of protests. We see people sometimes disappearing, people dying when they're protesting, people getting arrested. So my first question would be, is the situation as bad as it looks to us? Is it all true?
In fact, it's worse than when you look. It's worse than when international media can have access to show, because international media are not allowed to enter Venezuela. A lot of things like press journalists from CNN International or New York Times, they just are not allowed to enter Venezuela. So what you can see is mostly what the social media explains. You know, you have Venezuelan people in the streets always with their cell phone, like trying to record everything, so they can send all those videos through Twitter, Facebook, whatever. So let the world know. I really appreciate this, Paulo. I really appreciate this because you will let the world know what is really happening inside Venezuela and what's the real problem here. The problem is socialism.
So what happened to Venezuela? Because I was watching your panel, and it was fantastic. You were together with one of our members, actually our former president and president of our board council, Rodrigo Constantino.
Yeah.
And Rodrigo talked about Brazil, and he painted a very, very clear picture. But I was impressed because I knew a little bit about Venezuela, of course, but I didn't know how well Venezuela was before. So what happened to Venezuela?
You know, it all started with Carlos Andrés Pérez's government. They created a law, and that law was the 50-50. And they say that the 50% for the international investors and the 50% for the state in the old industry, right? So it was just a window, an opening in a window that was never closed. The gap started to grow, and they did the very same with almost every industry. Like 50% for the private and 50% for the government, and then we're going to redistribute the wealth to the poor, and the people was okay with that, and the government decided to grow and to grow and to grow. It went bigger, 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 with subsides, with a lot of controls, protectionism for the private enterprise. The people went okay with that, so it was a slow process. I believe that socialism is like a cancer. It's a slow process, you know. When you know you have it, it's too late. It's too late just to, you know, you take notice, oh, I have socialism, it's too late. Chavez was, you know, like the top of the cake. It was unavoidable. It was the process that led us to socialism was too long, was like 20 years, you know. So, I mean, you can never take liberty for granted. Never you can take liberty for granted.
So what you're saying is that it's pretty interesting, because what everyone thinks that Venezuela started to turn with Chavez. What you're saying is that Chavez was not was only a consequence
Yeah.
of what was happening way before.
Yeah.
So would you say this process started in the universities, with the media, with a
it
change
started-
of the mindset of
Yeah,
people?
of course, it started in the schools.
The schools.
They made a reformation in the schools about sembrar el petróleo, which is something like we need to put the oil in the hands of Venezuelans, and they started to teach the kids.
That sounds very much
Yeah.
like the petróleo é nosso.
Yeah.
It would be all oil is ours, belongs to us.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same expression we have in Portuguese. I don't think it's a coincidence.
Well, they started to teach in the schools that we were a rich country, and this is the most beautiful country in the world, and the soil it was given to us, and
One of the most beautiful women in the world.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, but so it's a beautiful country, but that nationalism. When you have nationalism, and chronic capitalism, and protectionism, you're going the way to socialism. Like those are like the symptoms,
So I understand that in Venezuela it is almost impossible to own a gun. So when did that happen? When did they take the gun from people?
Yeah, they started a legislation in the Congress to disarm the people, but we have access to nothing, but the criminals have access to those guns.
Right, because
the
criminals usually don't respect laws, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
They don't care about
They
laws.
don't care about laws, but I mean, the only monopoly of guns is the government. Okay, the only guns the criminals have, they encounter these guns from the government officials, from the bureaucrats. So.
And you can ask me, you can answer me honestly, of course, but my question is, do you believe things would be different, and maybe that Maduro would be already out of power if the population had access to guns? Do you think things would, at this point, where people are actually starving, do you think the protests that we've been seeing would become a little more violent?
Of course, this is an example. I live in I don't live what most Venezuelans are living, in fact, but it affects me a lot, of course. I live in a middle class block, street in Caracas. The mayor gave us a law so we can have guns after a long fight, right? We were like 3 years fighting for that guns, and he made a law because the place was so insecure, and we had no police, no wars, so we won, and now we can have guns.
You can.
And what happened since last year is almost like the 90% of the rate of the crimes went down.
So what you're saying, and Caracas is probably one of the most, if not the most.
It is the most violent city. We have more deaths in Caracas in one weekend than Afghanistan or Iraq in a week. We are not in war. So.
Well, the people say that Brazil is not in war, and when we have 65,000 homicides in the country a year. So and of course we're not allowed to have guns as well. So what you're saying is that in the part of Caracas, in the area of Caracas, if they allow people to have guns, crime rates actually dropped.
Yeah, because the criminals don't go there.
Of course, right?
It's logical.
No, the criminals lost the monopoly of the gun force, right?
Yeah, but only in that place because we fought a lot, and the mayor of that municipio, which is Municipio Sucre in Caracas, they say like, okay, let's do this because they have too much pressure in us. So let's give them a law so they can have guns. Of course, you have to meet a lot of requirements to have a gun. You have to do a lot of exams,
right,
a lot of analysis. But if you can have a gun, so when something happens, the neighbors go through the window like,
right,
and that's
taking
great.
care of themselves, right?
Yeah, it's a property.
Right, that's great. So in Brazil, we had, I'm sure you know that Dilma supported Maduro, and before that,
Yeah.
before her, Lula supported Chavez, and vice versa. Chavez was a big supporter of Lula.
Yeah.
Got a lot of money from Brazilian taxpayers.
Of course.
And now we're gonna have municipal elections in Brazil next week. And in Rio, the city that I'm from, and that's our institute is based, one of the candidates, actually two of them, but one of them openly supported Maduro. What kind of message would you send to him?
I mean, when it's so easy when you are not in the place, it's so easy to judge something when you don't live it. But I mean, I should tell them to learn about history. I want to all the socialist guys in Brazil, just learn about history. What happened with the Soviet Union, what happened with the Berlin Wall, because it's the same situation we're living in Venezuela. This is not new, lies, red lines, the day you have only one day to buy food. It's the same thing. It's like the same.
Is it actually hard to buy toilet paper? People talk a lot about that.
It is.
Would you use bolivares instead of toilet paper?
Some people use bolivares instead of toilet paper, but you can find toilet paper in the black market because you have black paper from Colombia.
So free market always finds a way, right?
Market always finds a way because market is human spirit.
Right. So is it? We heard rumors about Petrobras and Odebrecht, I guess.
Yeah.
So selling, or I don't know if it was actually the company or company employees selling chicken for Venezuelans in the black market.
Yeah. In fact, they have Brazilian chickens from a brand. It is Sadia or something.
Sadia,
yeah. Big chickens. They sell also ham.
Okay.
They sell a lot of stuff. They have a good business with Venezuelan government. In fact, they discovered one opposition movement in Venezuela discovered that all the Brits were making things like this. They say to the government, okay, this building costs like $200 million. The government approved the money, and they started the building, and the real cost was like $3 million.
So they started with less, with two, and then the real cost was.
So they were stealing, and of course a lot of intermediates in the government and in the Brazilian companies were there, but it was a corruption.
I wouldn't believe you. You were saying that Odebrecht is involved in corruption. That's impossible to believe. Oh, they're just involved in the largest corruption scandal in the history.
So it's normal. In Brazil, you see that's normal. Okay, it doesn't matter. Well, yeah, they're selling chicken. They're selling. The military sells the chicken, but the chicken is Brazilian.
Is it true? I heard there are like 3,000 generals in Venezuela.
Yeah, we have more generals. Yeah,
more generals than the U.S.
Well, they have the U.S. and China together, and they have never been in a war.
Oh, that's a good way to control the army and the military.
Well, the generals are like rewarded with charges, like, oh, you gotta take care of this street. So they're like the big bosses.
Right.
They need to control situations.
So you give just some authority to people that you think they rule a lot of things.
So they cannot go against you.
Right. So how would you say is the opposition in Venezuela? Like Capriles, he almost won the election. I'm not even.
He won the election.
I would say that's what I would say.
Yeah.
He probably won the election.
Yeah.
We don't know who won the election in Brazil for sure because we have a completely electronic voting system, which is the vote in our.
Thanks to Venezuela.
Thanks to Venezuela. That's what I was going to say.
Welcome. You're welcome.
The vote, and on the top of that, the votes are counted by, in the case of the presidential election, they were counted by the former lawyer of the government party, which is fantastic. I guess very, very, very fair, right?
Yeah.
So, how would you say is the opposition in Venezuela? Do you think Capriles, for example, is a good leader for the opposition? Sometimes he looks a little bit shy Do you think it's only in his for his own safety?
You know, the opposition in Venezuela are better prepared than the government. You know, these are guys from the middle class. They come from Harvard. They have the studies. But the problem is they're socialists too. So what they believe is that when they take the government, they're going to redistribute wealth better than government. And in fact, the opposition social cause is that the government hasn't been so socialist as they will be if they were in the government. I mean, we will have better hospitals, better schools, better whatever, better subsides, better protectionism, better private sector oligarchs if we were with the opposition. So
they're not actually right-wing capitalists, but
No,
they're like social democrats, right?
they allow private enterprise but with a lot of taxes. But you know, it is funny because the government says they are from the right, they're, you know, the Nazis or something like that, but they're so socialist that.
Well, in Brazil we have a very similar situation. What is considered in Brazil the right is actually social democrats. So it's very similar. They use the idea to shift the position, they shift the camera towards the left, and the ultra left becomes the left, and the center or center left becomes the right. So that's a way to consider. In Brazil, you don't hear the word, even on the news, you don't hear the word right anymore. You hear ultra right, ultra conservative. If anyone that's not social democrat is ultra conservative or ultra right wing crazy person. So to end this interview, my question is: Are you afraid of going back to Venezuela? You're very brave. I wouldn't ask for asylum here in the U.S., but are you afraid to go back to Venezuela?
You know, I believe that each one of us is necessary to fight this fight in Venezuela. Maybe we die and we don't see what we're building, but each one of us is necessary. I cannot leave Venezuela, even if they put me in jail, even if, I don't know, if they kill me. In fact, that's what they want, that I leave Venezuela. They will be happy if I don't come back tomorrow to Venezuela.
Do you feel afraid for your life?
Yeah, of course. That's not only me, because I'm a business guy and a think tank director, just because I am a Venezuelan, I am afraid of my life, because every Venezuelan in the street are afraid of their life, because you don't know what will happen. You know?
Do you think things reached the bottom, the rock bottom, do you think?
I hope so. When you read history, socialism ends when people hits the bottom. Right. So I hope that Venezuelan Berlin Wall is about to fall, because people are starving. We have no food. That's the bottom. Soviet Union went down when they had no food, you know. So that's the bottom. And what can I say is that 3 weeks ago we had the largest protest in Latin American history. More than 1 million people took the street of Caracas, and the opportunity I see in the middle term is that now people are open to change their ideas. They are like open to hear new things, like what we're going to do with this country, and that's when our job starts.
Well, yesterday at your panel, I heard someone saying actually thanking Venezuelans because you guys are showing the world how bad socialism can be, because we haven't had actually socialist countries in the world except for Cuba and
North Korea,
but we haven't had an example of a country actually crumbling so fast so close to us, and in Latin America. Everyone in Brazil now looks to Venezuela as an example of what not to do. It's too bad this is by the cost of Venezuelans' life and of course liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Of course
it is.
Well, thank you very much. Just
Hold on.
thank you for meeting us. And hang on.
Of
It's
course.
gonna end. It's gonna end. We hope it's gonna end.
We hope and we pray God for that every single day.
Thank you.